Thanks, Miss Lisa.
Hi.
Welcome. So first, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to put this story out to the world. You know, I know it's probably the experience that you went through is not the easiest thing to recount. I can only imagine what that feels like having to talk about it. But the reason why I was so adamant about talking about it is because, as you know, you're online in some of the groups that we're in, and there's always a whole lot of speculation from trainers, from people that aren't trainers, that have protection dogs, that don't really understand law. Now, law is subjective depending on the state that you're in, right? So we're in Illinois, we're in Chicago specifically. Well, your situation didn't happen in Chicago. They don't know where it happened in Illinois.
Yes.
So my goal, Gypsy's goal, as most people know, he was very meticulous about the law.
Yes,
right?
He was.
You know, and what the law states we can do with our dogs, and what that looks like for a civilian, right?
Yep.
Unfortunately, as you guys know, so many people's perspective of what protection is comes from a law enforcement, right, background.
Yes.
And what law enforcement can do with their dogs, we can't do with our dogs, right? This is a totally different thing.
Correct.
So my teacher, Gypsy, which is one of the things I appreciated about him, was he was about protection for the people, right? He would call it the church lady, right?
Yes.
That was his thing, the church lady.
Big on the church lady.
Big on the church lady, right? So what I want to do, because you actually have a real life situation, unlike most people that are talking but have never actually had to use their dog in real life, right? You have a real life situation where your dog bit somebody really bad, right?
It
On
wasn't
purpose.
Ladybug.
It wasn't Ladybug.
Yes.
Yeah, it was your previous dog.
Previous dog.
Another pit bull.
Yes.
Another pit bull, just for clarity, so you know
Milo,
what
who I
breed
don't
we're
have
dealing with.
anymore.
Yeah, she passed away. Great dog.
Yes.
But your dog bit someone on purpose. It wasn't like a freak accident. It wasn't like one of those things she got loose in.
Self-defense.
It was self-defense. You activated your dog,
Yes.
right, to protect you. So I kind of want you to start from the moment where you realize, okay, this could be a bad situation, and go from there. And I'll just kind of interject, and ask questions as you kind of tell your story.
Right. I was coming home. It was sunset. I was coming home, and this vehicle pulled up behind me. It was a full-size van.
Yep.
Didn't think nothing of it at first, but all of a sudden he got out and was like, ma'am, and he was walking towards me, and I told him to stop because Mila turned around and was looking at me, and then all of a
Now,
sudden,
real quick, I'm sorry. So Mila was with you?
yes, Mila was on the leash.
Gotcha.
She was
So
with me.
she wasn't in a house or anything,
No,
like she was with
no,
you? Okay,
no.
got you.
And Mila turned around like she's supposed to and was focused on this male. And all of a sudden, he started cussing at me and everything else. And I warned him again, stay where you're at. Then all of a sudden, he reached inside his coat. It was a long coat. And as I've been taught, when someone reaches in your coat and behaves like he did, cussing at me and screaming and yelling at me, I told Milo the word, get him. And she went at the end of her leash and grabbed the left arm, which his hand was inside the coat.
The weapon arm.
Yeah, the
right.
weapon arm.
The weapon arm.
Weapon arm.
Yep.
She bit him and was holding on. And as she was holding on, the guy took his right hand and was punching her in the side of her face to get her to get off of him. And I told her the word again. And the more he hit her, the more she latched on harder.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So at any point, right, did she actually let go of the bite and rebite again?
No, she stayed on the bite.
She stayed on the bite.
Yes.
Okay. So that happened. At what point let me ask you this. How long do you think that entire situation lasted before you called her off of the guy?
seemed like a really long time. I would say no more than 10 minutes.
Okay, so that entire 10 minutes, Mila was
Yes.
engaged in
Yes.
a fight with
And
that guy.
she was getting hit with his other hand to release.
Okay.
But all it did was make her
Make her
hold
more.
on more.
Gotcha.
And I go back to Gypsy's training.
Mhm.
That is what, you know, he trained like it was a real scenario.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so about 10 minutes before the police got there, now I'm assuming when the police got there, what happened at that moment? Like, what did the police say? Like, how did that scenario end when the police got there?
When the police came, I had to tell them, on top of handling my dog, I was almost attacked by this dog, by this person.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of trying to handle my dog, I told them, my dog bit this person in self-defense.
Mhm.
Well, the cop told me, release your dog.
Okay.
So I did.
Mm-hmm. So
But
she was still biting
She
when the
was
police
still
officer-
biting.
Okay.
And I'm trying to talk to the cop. So in other words, so my dog,
Yep.
which I was more concerned about at the
Yep.
time, wouldn't get hurt. And I told her
Mhm.
the word. I told her, no, come.
Yep.
And I told the cop, she will not stop until the guy
So he stopped.
stops. As long as he keeps moving, she's gonna bite.
Yeah.
Well, the cop told the guy, stop moving so
Okay.
she can release her dog.
Yeah.
Well, finally, he stopped.
Mm-hmm.
But her teeth were so deep in his arm, it
Mm-hmm.
took her like 3 times to get her teeth
Mhm.
out of his arms. It wasn't that she wasn't listening.
Yeah.
Her teeth were just so sunk into his arms.
Okay.
And when she did get them out, she came and she sat by me on my left side like she was supposed to.
Yep.
Not one bark, nothing, but she stayed focused on the guy.
Mhm. Okay.
And the cops told me to put my dog in the house.
Okay. All right, cool. So that's the actual situation, right? So now we got the aftermath, right? So after the situation happened, what was required of you as far as Mila was concerned? Did you have to put her in some type of quarantine, or what happened with that?
No, I had to take her to court
Okay.
to show that I had her under control.
Okay, so when you went to court, why did you have to go to court? Was it for you, or was it because the guy that actually tried to harm you took you to court?
To be honest, it was the guy trying to press charges on me because my dog bit him, and it
Right.
was done in self-defense.
Got you. So
Right.
this was civil court.
Yes.
Okay. So he was trying to sue you civilly, I'm assuming for emotional damage, physical damage, whatever he tried to conjure up
Damage, what do you call it, to your arm?
to the arm. So let's talk about that, right? What kind of damage was caused to the guy from the bites?
His arm was pretty messed up.
Okay. Okay.
He had some deep puncture wounds from
Okay.
Mila holding on. I
Okay.
mean, when she grabbed him, it was like here.
Okay.
It was here.
So now again, I know this would get a little icky, but what did his arm look like? Did you see his arm?
Yeah.
What did it look like? Like, if you could describe it, right? What did it look like?
It's like if someone's arm got stabbed with a knife. It went from her teeth, like major puncture wounds.
Puncture wounds.
Yeah,
So you
and
can
it
see
was
the blood.
bleed. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I'm asking this question is, right?
From listening to the cops, because you know they had to get him help, they said you could see to where his bones were. You could see the flesh.
Yeah.
You know, it was down that deep.
Down that deep.
Because they had to call the ambulance, of course, and
Yeah.
blah blah and all that stuff.
Okay. So, and the reason why I'm asking this question, because there's always this debate in the dog training world, right? About the damage that a dog causes to a person, how that can get the actual person that's using their dog within their right as a protection tool, no different than using a gun, because whether people realize it or not, the way the law looks at a dog is almost identical to how they look at a gun, right?
That's exactly what. Yep.
So And is that what the judge said?
Yeah, she told me for how my dog was trained,
Yeah.
it would, same thing goes into effect as if a gun was involved.
Right.
Because she was considered a lethal
A
weapon.
lethal weapon. Right.
And she explained to me why I had to bring Mila here. She wanted to see, the judge, to see how she was fired up and how she was when she was not fired up, which when I brought Mila into court, she was calm as could be.
Yep.
She had the muzzle on, of course.
Yep.
Didn't growl, nothing, acted like your normal, typical dog.
Right.
And, you know, and the judge noticed that.
Yeah.
And that's something she said, because she's like, I was like, yeah, this is the same dog that protected me from the guy.
From the guy. Yeah, and that's very important because, right, we talk about control, aggression, right? Obviously, if you're going to use a dog as a protection tool, aggression is going to be a part of it, right? That's just, obviously, that's a part of what protection is about. So you have to bring aggression out of a dog, but the key to that is obviously, can you control that aggression, right?
Yep.
So the reason why I'm asking these questions is because, again, we know Gypsy was a stickler about the law, right?
When you train you, I remember him saying, or you'll go be sitting in front of Judge Judy.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the thing is, my goal, again, which is one of the things I appreciated about Gypsy the most, that I've very rarely, if ever, heard from any other trainer, how meticulous he was about, one, the tactics that he used when he trained dogs, right? The defensive tactics.
Yes.
But then also how you as a civilian should also understand how to use your dog
exactly
in a defensive manner.
Exactly.
Because when you look online, the overwhelming majority of trainers are using their dog in an offensive manner, not a defensive manner, right? So all of this prey drive and all of this stuff that they're talking about, which again, I don't want people to look at this video and think I am talking bad about what they do.
Exactly.
But it does not apply to the average everyday person, right?
Exactly.
The way they train their dogs and how they teach handlers how to use their dogs, right? So in this situation, did the judge ever ask you, why did your dog cause so much damage? Did the judge ever ask you how many times the dog bit the guy?
Yes.
Okay. So
I told her, she asked me, how many times did your dog bite? I said, one time.
Okay.
And of course, I got the look because of the damage of the guy's arm.
Right.
She had the proof in front of her, and she said, one time. I said, one time.
Gotcha. Now, do you believe, if you would have said 2 or 3 times, do you believe that would have made a difference?
In what?
In how the judge viewed the dog.
I don't know, honestly.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking this question again, because in the protection world, there's this, you know, what I believe is a fallacy, right, behind a dog. If a dog bites a person, they call it fear biting, when a dog bites multiple times, right? Now, there's some truth to that, but there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of misinformation in that as well, right? So from what we're going to deem as the sport world perspective, right? We're only using that term to kind of describe the type of training that most people do, right? Because that world comes from the law enforcement world, right? They're looking at it from a perspective of excessive force, right? So if a police officer dog bites a perpetrator multiple times, then that police officer can get in trouble for using excessive force, right? Because the dog is only meant to apprehend something, right? So when you're trying to apprehend and hold something, then it makes sense that your dog should not bite multiple times, because you're trying to hold the thing in place or hold the person in place until the police officer gets there and releases the dog. So then the police officer can take over. But a civilian doesn't take over the situation, right? The dog is meant to keep the bad person away, right?
Correct.
So those rules don't apply, right, when we talk about a dog biting a person multiple times, from the judge perspective, right? What was the thing that the judge wanted you to do to show if your dog was just an aggressive dog or was it actually a trained protection dog? What did you have to do?
She, after we did our talk and everything, she looked at me and said, I want you to show me what your dog does when you turn her on. And I just looked at her and her, what do you call him? Bailiff. She looked at her bailiff and said, I want you, and talked to him. And I'll never forget that guy's look in his face. And I looked at her and she just said, you said she'll turn off the minute you say no. I was like, yeah, I know what my dog, you know. And the plaintiff just looked at her. He did his job. So I was like, okay. I told him what I was going to do. I told him, I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk out, put her at a stay, shake your hands, just say something to you for a few seconds, step back. And then, you know, go from there. Well, I did that. Well, being the plaintiff, not thinking,
The
bailiff, he put his hand on his gun. Well, that fired Mila up. She lunged for him. And he moved his hand. I told him, take your hand off the gun. And when I said no, before I could even say come, Mila came to me, sat on my left side, and just looked down. Then I put her at a stay again. I walked out, shook his hand, and went back. She dismissed the case.
You hear that, folks? She dismissed the case, right?
Yes.
So
she was actually more upset. She was upset because Mila was injured when I had her there to begin with. From the guy punching her face. Her whole face was swollen. And to be honest, her muzzle really wasn't as, you know.
It wasn't fit because of
and when she seen that, how the dog came by me and just looked at him. And then she laid down and she just looked at him like, okay. She's like, very impressed. She said, you have your dog under control.
And dismissed the case.
Dismissed the case. And to be honest, he got it even worse because of how much he exaggerated.
Of course. So, if you didn't have control over your dog, what were you at risk of losing?
Everything. Losing my dog, losing everything I have. Probably me being in jail myself.
It's possible. That's the difference between an aggressive dog and a trained dog, right? So, and this is the reason why I'm you know, asking detailed questions, is because you get so many people that say they're trainers, so many people that are in the protection dog world, right? And we know that a lot of these guys, just because they have dogs that bite, doesn't necessarily mean they are protection dogs, right? So you have so many of these people that are talking that have never actually experienced, right? A real life situation where they had to activate their dog. A lot of them will say, oh yeah, my dog has a live bite. Well, why are you not telling the story as far as the after effect, right? What happens? So I thought this story was powerful because I have never heard it been told before. I've heard people conjure up stories to make other people believe that they have a dog that will bite somebody in real life, right? But I actually have a person that is actually going through it and had to see the other side of it, right?
That's why I like personal protection training.
So, you know,
can turn them on and turn them off, and they are your, like I use the word, your normal, typical dog.
Everyday dog. And this is where, right, and we're going to end it here, and I'm sure you're going to know this phrase. The best bite is no bite.
Yes, right? Gypsy.
Now, for me, that's a double entendre, right? Because most people that don't understand what gypsy means when he's saying that, they will go straight to, oh, well, what you saying, your dog is not going to bite.
Your dog don't have.
If your dog, the first thing is if you can use your dog in a manner to make a person think twice, and your dog doesn't have to bite that person, you won. right?
Most generally, it's just the alerting.
It's the alerting, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why you won, right, is because one, you made that person go away,
Yep.
right? Which is the goal.
Yep.
But in the dog world, we're so focused on the dog biting, right? It's almost like as human as we're supposed to be, we get more barbaric about the dog biting
Yep.
than the actual dog itself, right? So I believe a lot of people in the dog world, specifically in the dog sport world, that's masquerading as protection world, they're more fixated on biting than the dog is.
And Mila was
Mm-hmm.
Gypsy's dog, Asia, which people knew.
Mm-hmm.
That was Asia's granddaughter. Mila was.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and again, that's something else most people don't know about
Yes.
Gypsy. They don't know he had
Her
pit bulls. He
father,
actually loved
Tank,
pit bulls.
was Asia's son.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people don't know he actually loved pit bulls, right?
Yep.
Asia, like
Asia
he
was
probably
his
loved
girl.
Asia more than
Yeah.
he loved his Canis Panthers. So, and a lot of people don't know that about Gypsy.
Asia was, yep,
So,
Mila's grandma.
yeah. So, you know, for me, the best bite is no bite is so powerful because again, you have that first part of it to where if I can get my dog to make that person change their mind and my dog didn't have to bite the person, I won multiple times because now I don't have to deal with the after effect, right?
Yep.
And let's be honest, most people don't have the means, right, to have to hire a lawyer because even though you won your case, you still had to hire someone to represent you.
Did it all on my own.
You did it. So,
Yes.
but
Yes.
that's not normal.
No, it isn't.
That's not
And I knew
normal.
walking in, I didn't know what was going to happen.
What was going to happen? So luckily you had control over your
Yes.
dog, which I know I've experienced in real time. A lot of these people in the protection world don't have control over their dogs because they get so hyper focused on the dog biting. They would rather have the dog bite than actually teach the dog to stop biting because in their mind it's going to take away from the dog's drive to bite.
Yep.
Right? And it's the weirdest concept in my, it just makes no sense to me, right? So that's the one side. And then the other side is being able to tell your dog to stop biting if it had to bite. So when you said no to your dog, right? The best bite is no bite. Hey dog, no, stop biting. Come back to me, right? So it's a double entendre.
Yep.
If your dog doesn't have to bite, even though it's prepared to bite if it has to,
Yep.
right? You won. And then if you could tell your dog to stop biting if it had to bite, you still win because even if you have to go through the
Correct.
after effects of it, you can prove like, hey, I got control of my dog. This
Correct.
is a professionally trained dog. This is not just an aggressive dog, right? That just wants to bite people because it's scared, right? That's what people think about defense trained dogs. They just think, oh, they're scared dogs, so they're just gonna bite anybody that walks by them. All of this stupid
And
stuff
I
you
was
hear.
in situations with Mila, even before this, it was more, like you said,
Yeah.
just her, growling at somebody to say, hey, stay away, and it got him away.
Yeah, for sure.
That was her first time of ever having to bite.
Absolutely. So, and that's 99% of the situations. You know, when they see a dog growling and barking, or even looking like it has some intent, most people are gonna. But you do have that 1% where Mila was prepared for it, and she did what she was trained to do to a T. So, so again, I appreciate you telling that story. Hopefully, this applies some real life. What's the word I'm looking for? It gives people what protection training is supposed to be for the real life person, not the person that likes to go on the field and get accolades for their dogs. And again, I'm only saying that in contrast to the kind of training that we do, because as you know, we get a lot of ridicule, right, for what we do all the time, right? And one of the first things Gypsy told me when I started training with him was, when people find out that you're my student, they're gonna automatically hate you.
Yes.
And it was true.
It's true.
It was true. I get it all the time, right? And you see me go back and forth with some of the people, and that's just me. That's the internet me saying, hey man.
Mila had a lot of respect for the cops. The cops liked her.
Okay, yeah.
Because of that situation.
Because of that situation. Yeah. So, and Mila had more control than most cops' dogs do. Because if you look at most cops' dogs, if you look at the videos, they can't even call their dogs off of a person. They got to go choke their dogs off of a person. And then if the dog get pissed off enough, that same dog will turn around and bite them.
That is what the cops, when she got well known, you know, with the cops and everything after that, that's one thing they said.
Yeah.
Especially for a pit bull, they say, you call that dog off, you tell it no, it listens.
It listens, yeah,
Not
absolutely.
only one time and that dog's done.
It's done, yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you made it out unscathed.
Yes.
You know, that's
Thanks to Milo.
Thanks to Mila. It's an unfortunate situation, but at the same time, it's a situation of triumph as well.
Yes.
You know, because if you didn't have Milo, who knows what would have happened? You know,
Probably wouldn't be here.
it's very possible. It's very possible. So that's the power of a protection dog.
Yep.
So again, I appreciate you telling the story. Hopefully this helps some people get some better perspective behind why we do what we do on the defensive side, right?
Yes.
You know, we're about to train this beautiful girl. So not only are we going to put this footage out, we're about to train this girl. We're going to put some of that footage out to show what we do so people can have a better understanding. So, folks, this was a great treat, I believe. Lisa, we appreciate you again.
You're welcome.
And let's get started. Let's start training.